readers. I'm happy to be with you today. For those of you who see me, I miss you, and I wish I was at school reading you this story instead of having you see it on tape. But this is what it is, so I'm going to share a story with you today, and I'm going to share the story, Starstruck, The Cosmic Journey of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And this is a biography, and I wanted to share it to you because reading a biography can be different than reading a regular storybook or even a regular nonfiction book. It's told in the way that a story would be told, but the information in it is factual. The things about our person that we're reading about today, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is true information. So we want to think about, as a good reader of a biography, this is what we want to think about. We want to think about, why does this story matter? That's what we need to think about as we're reading, because determining what is important about the story is why the author wrote the story. They want you to know about Neil deGrasse Tyson because they have some things that has happened to him that are pretty inspiring and that they think you could learn from. So how do we do that? What we're going to do is we're going to synthesize what we're reading. We're going to bring our own knowledge, what we already know about life and things that happen in our lives and things that we've experienced, to the text. And as we're doing that, we're going to think about, why did the author want us to learn about this person? And what kind of themes can I learn from this person? And themes are lessons that we can learn in our life, like how to be a kind person, how to share, or what it's like to be determined and to never give up. Those are like life lessons that we learn. And we're going to learn that through reading this story today. And we want to figure out, what are some of those life lessons? And as we read this story, I'm sure that we can find that out because he is very inspiring. So I'm going to read this story, and it's pretty long. And as I'm reading, there are a couple juicy words that I want us to be on the lookout for. The first one is the title of the book, Starstruck. Say it, Starstruck. And that means that when you're starstruck, it means you're fascinated or obsessed with something. You're greatly impressed by it. So a lot of times we are starstruck by famous people. And Neil is starstruck by science. So he is starstruck in a different way. But I guarantee you're going to be starstruck by him. So we're going to be on the lookout for that word. And the next word is explosion. And there are a few varieties of this word. The base word is explode. And explode means to have like a sudden outburst of a noise or light. And it kind of is a violent blow up. And an explosion is the same thing when that happens. And then sometimes you might hear explode in the story. You might hear explosive when something helps explode something. So we're going to see a lot of ways that this word is used in the story. The base word explode, explosion, explosive. So if you hear those words, give me a thumbs up. So remember, today we're going to be reading this biography, Starstruck, by the Cosmic Journey of Neil deGrasse Tyson, by Kathleen Krull and Paul Brewer, illustrated by Frank Morrison. The illustrations are amazing. So we're going to be reading this book, and we're going to be thinking about, why does this story matter? And maybe we'll get life lessons from it, so we can ask ourselves, what are the life lessons? Or we might just say, why is this information important? So we can think about, why is this person important? So as we're reading, we're going to be doing that as our reader and kind of synthesizing as we read, go a couple pages in, think about, wow, what was important about this person? What did I learn from them? What are some life lessons? What are some things that they've done that are really inspiring that I should know about? So that's what we're going to do as we're reading today. I'm going to stop a few places. I'm going to stop places for you to think. And we're going to really think about, why does this story matter? All right, so let's get reading. Starstruck, The Cosmic Journey of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And this is a long story, so if you want to pause it and come back to it later, that's totally fine. Starstruck, The Cosmic Journey of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Our universe began its dance with what scientists call the Big Bang. After millions of years of darkness, spots of impossible brightness, stars sizzled into shape. Some grew so massive they exploded, spewing stardust every which way. Boom! The stardust contained what was needed to create more shapes and more patterns, the planets, our whole universe. Zoom forward 13.8 billion years to the Sky Theater at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. On the domed ceiling, the planets and constellations created by the Big Bang pushed against the black ink of space. 9-year-old Neil DeGrass Tyson had never seen so many stars. After all, from his apartment in the Bronx, it looked like there were only about 12. Now above him were what seemed to be like millions, too many possibly to be real. Was this a hoax, a joke? He wasn't sure, but when the lights came on, his thoughts began to explode. The universe called me. He said simply, and he would never be the same. Starstruck. Neil started looking up wherever he could. Even though he lived in an apartment building named Skyview, his view of the night sky wasn't very good. Too many bright city lights got in the way. His good friend Philip lent him a pair of binoculars. Neil used them to peer at the moonscape over the Hudson River. The glossy orb was with its craters and shadows, and it came alive. He marveled. On a family trip out of the city, away from the city lights, he was able to see more. Sure enough, the night sky really did look like the one at the Hayden Planetarium. It was real. The sheer wonder of it all, the building, the blinding beauty, the mysteries just waiting to be solved, fascinated him. Neil was hooked. He had a whole new goal. Becoming a baseball player was out. Now he was going to be an astrophysicist, a scientist who studies the universe. So I'm going to stop here and kind of synthesize what I heard. And what I heard was Neil became interested in learning about the universe when he was 9 years old, sitting in that planetarium. And then after that, any chance he could get, he was looking at the stars. And this idea of this trip that took him away from his city life, and he got to see the whole view of the sky, really hooked him into being interested in studying the universe. So I already am learning about, our interest when we're really young can really inspire us to do great things and keep us curious about what's going on in the world. So I think the author wants to know that Neil's kind of a curious guy and that he is passionate about this study of the universe already at a young age. Neil's parents weren't scientists and they weren't rich, but they did everything they could do to help. For his 12th birthday, they bought him a telescope. Atop the 20 stories of Skyview, he examined the night sky in all its glimmery glory. His parents also brought him every science book on sale so he could learn more about what he was looking at. Neil had one of the biggest libraries of any kid at school. His knowledge of the stars began to explode. So I bet you the author kind of wants us to know that this part is important because even as a young kid, his parents kind of helped him get this interest of astronomy to keep going. They got him a telescope, books, and I think they wanted you to know that his parents helped him along the way too. We all need helpers, right, to help us. The more Neil learned, the more he thirsted to know. But he needed a bigger, better telescope, one that cost more money than his parents could afford. Neil solved his own problem. He offered to walk his neighbor's dogs and for pay. They were pampered city dogs with names like Tuffy. On rainy days, some even had their own raincoats and boots. Eventually, he saved enough money to buy a 5-foot-long telescope with his parents' help. I love this picture. Neil headed back to the roof. Sometimes people saw him up there and were afraid. What was an African-American boy doing out on the roof? What was that long telescope? Was he an armed robber? Often they called the police. Neil solved this problem too. When the police officers stopped by, he would offer them a view from his telescope. He showed off the stars like powdered sugar flung against black velvet. He would point out his favorite planet, Saturn. Saturn just blew his mind. With its dozens of moons and its stunning, elaborate rings, it was the most gorgeous thing he'd ever seen. The police officers would usually end up being won over. It turned out Neil could make others starstruck too. Neil loved school. He loved to learn. But not every teacher was his fan. "Your laugh is too loud," one told his mom. On his report card, they complained that he spent more time talking to his friends than paying attention. But his 6th-grade teacher noticed something. Every single book report he wrote had to do with astronomy. She told him about a class at the Hayden Planetarium, advanced topics in astronomy for young people. Neil took the subway to the classes at the planetarium by himself. He was often the youngest person, and some information sailed right over his head, but he wouldn't quit. He kept pushing himself to learn more and more. I bet you, why does the author want us to know this? Why is this important? Neil's quest to understand the cosmos made him a young star at the planetarium. The director of education was so impressed that he invited Neil on an unbelievable journey to the coast of Northwest Africa. An ocean liner was being turned into a floating laboratory to view a total solar eclipse. 2,000 scientists and observers, including famous astronauts and science fiction writers, were making the 2-week trip. At 14, his trusty telescope in hand, Neil was the youngest scientist on board. Observing and studying the eclipse alongside expert scientists made him feel like a science superhero. Then on the way home, he won the dance contest and the trivia contest, thanks to his knowledge of Saturn, the perfect ending to his first expedition. So I want to stop here and kind of ask you some questions to think about. So, why do you think the author wants us to know about this? Why is this important? What lessons are there to learn? I think Neil's enthusiasm and his gifts have given him a lot of opportunities, right? People have noticed things in him and noticed that he's so excited about learning all of this information about astronomy that they're giving him opportunities, because I bet you not only does he love to learn about it, but he's also very gifted. So he can share his information with others and he learns quickly. So I think that that's pretty cool to learn about him, and the author wants us to know that even as a very young person, he was doing great things. And people gave him a lot of opportunities, right? People helped him along the way, like his teachers sent him to the classes at the planetarium. And then that class gave him an opportunity to come on this great expedition to see the solar eclipse. Pretty amazing for such a young guy. After passing tough tests, he made it into the Bronx High School of Science. He was a card-carrying nerd kid, winning the science fair prizes and subscribing to the brainy Scientific American magazine. In the lab, he was trying not to blow things up. In physics class, he was getting to know the universe. His life wasn't all science. He excelled at dance, from ballet to ballroom, and he was captain of the wrestling team. He even used his understanding of physics to win matches. Wow, he is talented in a lot of ways. When he was 15, Neil got to go to a summer astronomy camp in Mojave Desert in Southern California. Scorpions, tarantulas, and howling coyotes? No problem. That was bliss. Days were full of classes on the subjects he loved. Nights were for observing with the high-powered telescopes. So far from the city lights, the stars burst with more radiance and in much more greater number than he'd seen since that first visit to the Hayden Planetarium. It was too aspiring for words. But with his dog walking money, he'd also bought a good camera for taking sky pictures. He used the camera to bring home the galaxies, constellations, moons, and the planets he captured on film and shared his picture with 50 adults at his first public talk at the City College of New York. Was he nervous? No. Talking about science was like breathing, and people liked his explosive excitement. A career in astrophysics was Neil's only goal. Many people noticed his ability and pushed him forward. Some didn't. He often had to cope with racism. Neil had friends who thought a future as an athlete or a leader in the African American community would be better goals for Neil than becoming a scientist. But Neil had a strength burning inside, a flaming passion. He pictured it as a tank of rocket fuel, and every new discovery, like seeing Saturn through a telescope for the first time, poured fuel into that tank. What are you learning about him as a person that this author might want you to know? Yeah, he's determined, right? I think you're right too. He's determined. He's gifted, smart, intelligent. And that he lets those things guide him. He's enthusiastic about his knowledge. And that's contagious, and other people are inspired, right? By the time he was starting to pick a college, his reputation in the scientific community was growing. The most famous scientist of this day, the astronomer Carl Sagan, hoped to convince Neil to come to his school. One snowy February afternoon, Neil took the bus to visit Sagan at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. They talked nonstop about science while Neil toured the labs, and then Sagan drove the high school senior through the snow back to the bus station. In case the bus had trouble with the snow and Neil needed a place to stay, Sagan gave Neil his home phone number. Neil was touched. But he'd also heard many good things about Harvard University, and that's the school he chose. In college, he stretched his muscles by wrestling, dancing, and running up and down every single path through the seats at the campus stadium. He stretched his brain by inhaling physics, mastering equations, and experimenting. And he stretched his wallet by earning money by writing, teaching, and tutoring. After 11 more years of school, he earned the highest degree possible in astrophysics. He literally was 1 in a million. So why would this author want us to know about him? We got a good answer there, right? Neil kept looking up, continuing his research, solving mysteries. Then at age 35, he went to work at his beloved Hayden Planetarium, the very place where his dream had started. Eventually, he rose to become its director. One day, a TV station asked him to appear as an expert. He was happy to explain the day's news about the solar flare, a small explosion on the sun. Afterward, Neil was jolted. I had never before in my life seen an interview with a Black person on television for expertise that had nothing to do with being Black. He made it his mission to be visible, letting his enthusiasm explode in public. He wanted to infect others with his sense of awe and wonder at the universe. Who wouldn't want to study it? And he learned more and more new things in his research, and it made him giddy, wanting to grab people on the street and say, "Have you heard?" why is he important? Why would the author want us to know about him? Because, hey, he's famous. If he's on TV, he must be a famous scientist, right? It's cool to learn about the life of someone famous, right? And how they got where they are. Then it was time for the Hayden Planetarium to update its display of planets. Neil met with other scientists and looked at the latest discoveries, and in 2000 they made a stunning decision. Pluto, then the smallest planet, no longer would be labeled a planet in the solar system display. They decided it had more in common with the smaller icy objects than it did with other planets. Neil got hate mail from Pluto lovers everywhere, but he showed that the frontier of science can change as new facts get discovered. 6 years later, the International Astronomical Union agreed with him. Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet. That determination, man. No one has quite as much fun talking about science as Neil DeGrass Tyson. He is able to summon all the social energy his earliest teachers complained about. Fascinating facts tumble out, one explosion after another. He waves his hands and snaps his fingers. Laughter bubbles up, sometimes turning into a roar. Equations are awesome. The universe is hilarious. Certain equations make him misty. The sight of Saturn is simply jaw-dropping. He uses lots of exclamations like, whoa! He has a strong opinion just about anything scientific, from the mystery of dark matter to the silliness of zombies. I have odd cosmic thoughts every day, he says, wearing one of his many star-themed ties. He has more than 100. He never gets tired of appearing in public and dancing with words to describe science. He also pours energy into articles, books, tweets, and TV appearances. So why does this story matter? What's important about Neil deGrasse Tyson? Well, Neil is rocking the world of science. He hangs on to his memory of being a small boy having his mind blown under a starry dome. Sometimes when he's in a remote area and sees all those stars, he thinks, this looks just like the Hayden Planetarium. And when he goes outside, he still looks up. I don't ever want to lose that. In life and universe, it's always best to keep looking up. Did you enjoy that story? I'm starstruck. Are you? Did you learn any lessons from Neil in this story? Why would this author think he's so cool? Did you learn some life lessons from him? I'll let you think for a minute. Did you learn something important about the way he was to kind of inspire your life? Maybe never give up. That's a good one. Learning new things is exciting. That's a good one. What about even when things are hard, you keep on trucking? And you can be anything if you put your mind to it. Those are all life lessons. Well, I think our author gave us a lot to think about with this story. Definitely is cool to see who he became from this young 9-year-old boy and into this famous scientist. So I'm certain that that's why the author wanted to share his story with you, his life story, to see kind of how that became possible. And there were lots of great life lessons to learn from this story. So I hope you liked it. And when you're reading biographies, remember to kind of think about, why does this story matter? And think about your own life and kind of synthesize the information, unpack it, and kind of think about, what lessons could I learn from this person? And why are they important? Thank you for letting me read to you today. It was a good story. Go look him up. Listen to him talk. He's really fun to listen to. He's on talk shows all the time. He has his own shows. Go look him up and learn from him.